Dependencies are an important function in Gridley and vital to content management overall. They track when string data changes and the resulting impact it creates. This is particularly important in base localization tracking, but also if using a pivot language, localization of voiceovers, LQA, and so on. I'll show you how these work in this small sample grid. If you've chosen to create a localization grid, then you've already set up your language dependencies. If, however, you have not or are looking to add further languages or other dependencies, then this is for you. So here we have a very basic grid. We have our IDs, source text, etc. You'll see at the top here we have our dependency button. Once dependencies are set, a small red icon will appear in the corner of this button. So at the moment, no red icon means no dependencies. I shall add one now between the source text and the Spanish. So we select dependency here, add dependency from English to Spanish. You can see here that we have status icons which show that these require translation. You can also see here we have our little red icon. When a change is made to the source language data, dependent columns are highlighted to indicate that an updated translation or asset is required, usually target languages, but can be both text and associated assets. What I'll do now is add some Spanish text. And there we go. You can see the status icons here, up to date. If I now go back to source and make a change here, we'll then see that this will then flag this as being out of date. So what we can do here is then change this, enter, and it's now back up to date. I'll also show you an additional dependency with the source audio column here. Please note that additional files are not a requirement in Gridley. I'm just showcasing this to demonstrate how a column can depend on another. So we have this string here, and we can preview.
This is super cool.
Now I'd like this to be dependent on the source text, so if there is a change to source, it will then flag this WAV as being out of date. So what we need to do is go up to dependency here, add a dependency from the source text to source audio, and we'll see here this is currently up to date, and then make a change here. So let's just change this to magic, and you'll see now that this is out of date. And as Spanish is a dependency, you'll see that this is also flagged as out of date. Another great example is if you're working with a pivot language. So let's say that Chinese is the actual source, which is then moved into English, and then from English into various other languages, in this instance Spanish. So what we do is create a column here, and we'll call this Simp Chinese. The data type is localization, and it will be a source language, and the language itself is simplified Chinese, and save. I'll then take that column and then simply drag and drop over here before the source just to keep things nice and tidy. What I need to do now is set a dependency, and I'll add that from Chinese to English. You'll see that these are all currently set as up to date. As soon as I add something here and enter, you'll see that this is now flagged as out of date. So our pivot language here needs to be updated. Once it's updated, it will then push this into an out of date state. So if I then change this and enter, you'll see this is now up to date, and this is now out of date. To filter highlighted records, you can click up here on the filter button and choose the status you wish to filter on. So for example, if I choose out of date, it will just show those strings that are currently out of date. And those are some examples on how to set up dependencies.